Hey, friends, welcome back to another Field and Garden podcast. It is your friend in flowers, Lisa Mason Ziegler, and I couldn't be happier to be here with you today and talking about the subject this week of flower farming, the reality of time. But before we jump in, I just want to remind everybody that this podcast was really my brainchild of bringing to you kind of those topics that we don't often see talked about and heard about that can just really help empower you to become a successful flower farmer. No matter how small or how big your dream is, we at the Gardener's Workshop want to help you get there. So, friends, before I jump into this topic, I want to just remind everybody that if we can't manage our own time, it's really kind of likely that we can't manage a business because it's kind of like that first big girl step that you really have to just draw the line in the sand. And for those of you that are parents, this is like you are the parent of your business, right? Because I want to just remind us all, and I have to remind myself of this all the time, y'all, that everybody has the same 24 hours in a day, in every single day. And this means that the people that you admire, the people that you follow and are in awe of all the time, and you just don't know how they got it all done, they had the same number of hours in their day that you do. It's just a matter of them picking and choosing what they do with that day. And for me, I had to become really realistic and very deliberate about this, about all of this to make my business successful. And I want to just say, because when I heard this, this is what helped me flip the switch. This is a choice and a decision that you make. This is not something you're just a gift you're born with, right? So the time that you have to start and run your business is a reality of what time you have available. And you are the only one that can really manage and change that up. So I have 5 points that I just really want to hit home with you guys. Because number one, flower farming businesses have a lot of balls in the air. We're juggling a lot, right? And so effective time management is the crucial piece of the whole big picture. Because remember, we're going to be planting, seed starting, harvesting, processing those flowers, marketing those flowers. And then once you market them, that means you have to sell them and deliver them, right? And then there's the business stuff. And oh, yeah, especially those of you that still have families at home, you have to have a life. And so, how much of this stuff are you going to choose to do while you're just learning to become a flower farmer? So let's just think about it for just a minute. So it's so easy. I mean, I think it's why there's so many people that take the leap from being a gardener to a flower farmer. Almost every gardener you've ever met and known, talked to, read about, they all overbuy. They buy more plants than they have room for. They buy more seeds than they can ever start. They start more seeds than they could ever plant. And that's just part of our DNA makeup, right? And that is totally fine when you're a home gardener. But when you decide to take that step to start a business, I mean, and what that means is that you are going to be spending money with the goal of making more money than you're spending. You really have to put some controls on. And I will tell you, I am the first. I definitely my eyes are bigger than my stomach still at times, but you have to really limit it. And I want to say to you, if you do it successfully in the beginning, you can bring that back in after you've gotten the ball up and rolling, right? Because if you overspend, then overplant, you know what that leads to? At the end of the year, you have not made money, which is incredibly not just depressing, but it like maybe makes or breaks whether you're going to actually do it the next year. Then worse than that is if your garden is constantly out of control, meaning either it's overrun with weeds, or you're not selling what you're growing, or you can't get it all cut. There are just so many pieces to this that we pretty much truly set ourselves up to fail, right? And time management is at the root of it. Even though it's not the fun part, it's not the part we want to think about, this is where it all starts. Because then if you overplant, you have to cut all that stuff, and you have to cut it at the right time. You have to deliver it while it's in the stage to be delivered, correct? And not redoing stuff. And this is something that's just very hitting home with us. It's just the harvesting portion of the business is just as important as where are you going to sell and who are you going to sell it to and all the other pieces, right? And then you have to have time, y'all, to market your crops throughout the season. And that's something that we'll talk about a little bit more. But you have to constantly be beating the bushes for more customers, even though you think you're sitting fat and sassy and selling everything, right? So you have to have time to do it. And then, you're thinking of the business stuff. It's like you have to have time to take care of business. And that is something that I find that most people really just push aside. And that is part of the recipe of this failure. And oh, yeah, then there's that life I mentioned. You have to choose when you're going to draw that line in the sand. For me, for the first few years, I just really overdid it. And it led to crashing and burning, which led me, I won't even go down that rabbit hole. That's what led me actually to launching the Gardener's Workshop, which is an online garden store. I thought I was going to do that instead of become a flower farmer. And then after a year, I realized I could not flower farm. I loved it so very, very much. But that's when I learned I had to manage my time so much better. And because here's the thing you have to remember is that while you're learning to become a flower farmer, to become a business owner, to take care of business, to sustain your business, to make sure that you're being successful, not only for yourself, but for your family that you're dragging along with you through this whole process, right? So here's the number one thing you have to think about is, so how much should you plant while you're learning all this stuff, while you're learning to become a flower farmer? While you're learning all this stuff, why not just control how much you do so you can nail it and get really, really good at it, right? Then number two is a structured business life. And I lead such a structured business life, y'all. Every single day has certain things that are just written in stone around here. And this helps to prioritize your tasks. It optimizes your workflow, and it just when you have designated time to do things, it helps you to do it a whole lot better, and it ensures completion of those significant things that just have to get done. I will tell you that things like, for instance, seed starting, until I became a structured seed starter, and for me, what that meant, that's when my business started to grow. That's when I hired Kelly, who was not a gardener, was not a flower farmer. She was my niece that wanted to stay home with her babies. And she said, Aunt Lisa, I'll do anything. Just teach me something I can do 1 or 2 days a week. And I taught Kelly how to become a seed starter. And she took over seed starting because we just couldn't we just kept pushing it aside. So what does this look like? For me, here's our week. All those years we were in high production. On Monday was the day we had the biggest harvest of the week. That's when the most staff was here actually cutting flowers. Or if you want to backtrack to when I was doing all the cutting, which was probably for the first 7 or 8 years of my business before I actually had others helping me, whether that was right or wrong, I don't know. But Monday was a day that my family knew not to drop by. My friends knew not to drop by because we get up on Monday mornings and hit the farm as early as sunrise to get all the flowers cut. It was for our biggest push of the week. So Monday was a harvest day. Tuesday was the day of selling and delivering primarily to our commercial customers. Those are florists and event people. And this just allowed me in my mind to know, all right, Mondays, Sunday night, I knew what we were going to have for dinner on Monday night. I knew what I was eating for lunch. Sometimes I even packed it. I just set myself up for success because that was definitely the hardest day of the week. And so that really helped me to prioritize tasks. We started early on Mondays. I knew that all the buckets were clean, ready, and waiting for us. We had all the flower conditioning products. Do you know what I mean? I knew what Monday was. Tuesday, I knew exactly what my mindset was going to be because I had my list of customers. My flowers were all sold before I ever left my farm. No unsold flowers typically ever left my farm. They were all sold before 9 o'clock Tuesday morning. And that was because I had laid out my customers by the order of when they got in their shops and how I approached them. And so I knew that I needed to be bright and bubbly at 7 o'clock in the morning was when my first customer got into his studio. He was my biggest customer. He got the best of everything because he was the first guy in. And I will tell you that I learned years later that he knew that. And he came in on Tuesdays earlier so he could be my first customer. So it prioritized. And then I knew the rest of the day was us packing. And then that afternoon, delivering all those flowers to people, right? Then on Wednesdays, I did business. That's the day I call it, and I still call it the day I push paper. That's the day I place orders, pay bills, take care of payroll, look at the taxes, look at reporting. That is the day that I do that. And typically, when years later, when I had employees, that was a day of work on the farm. They were planting, weeding, doing things out in the garden, turning crops, those types of things. And it just allowed us to do it better. And then Thursdays was another harvest day. And this harvest was for our end of the week people, grocery stores, our members only markets, supermarkets, farmers markets, and bouquet subscriptions. And so we knew that Thursday was going to be another long day. We had people starting out the harvest in the morning, and then that afternoon, bouquet making commenced for supermarket deliveries at the crack of dawn on Friday. Our members only market was set up, and then there were designated flowers to go to the farmers market. So we knew it made us very efficient. There was no in the middle of the day, oh, let's go start some sunflower seeds, or, oh, let's go weed. It was very structured business life. And all of this just ensures that you really get it all done, right? So, number 3, and this is a really important one that I think most of us don't even think about because you don't know that you're going to need it, is to create your systems of how you're going to do things on your farm while you are still a one-man or woman show. And that is because I still, in all parts of my business, I'm the one that comes up with the ideas. Now there are other people that actually implement them, but in a flower farming business, typically it is the owner that sets up the systems of the flower farm because you're the one with the most experience. Most of us aren't fortunate enough to hire a flower farmer that knows how to do a lot of stuff, right? So that's why you have to lead by developing these systems while you're the one-man show. You know that you're covering all the bases. And it's the root of everything. It's the root of how you're ever going to grow your business and get employees on. And whether this means that you use a big calendar like I use, or you use technology. Everybody has different ways of doing it, right? But this streamline of doing this and record keeping, and when I say inventory tracking, it's like, we never really had to do this, but I see other flower farmers that struggle with this, so I will just mention it here, that we never had to keep track of which buckets were older because our whole business model was made around cutting today, kicking them out the door the next day. we did our best to never sit on flowers. And of course, there were weeks that we didn't sell everything, but it wasn't a big problem. But you need to create a system for that. And all of this streamlining systems means that the day that you start hiring perhaps employees, whether that is your kids, your sister, your cousin, or a stranger, that you can say, and here is how I do it. And you can train them and they can have perhaps even it's called an SOP, standard operating procedure, the steps of how you do something. I mean, it just sets you up for success by managing your time. And then you manage the people's time that actually work for you. Now, to grow that business, you have to learn how to delegate. And I say this because this is not easy, y'all. Giving up, I mean, how many times I hear it still? I heard it last week in my own business. I'd just much rather do that myself than asking XYZ to do it. And I understand. I mean, I know all about this, y'all. But I had to learn to let go of things. To grow your business, you have to learn how to delegate. And yes, you can do everything better than everybody else in your business, but that's not the point. That means if that's the way your business is run and you do everything and you don't have employees, you've created a job for yourself. What there's nothing wrong with that. You haven't created a business. A business is when your business has other people and your business can go on perhaps without you being involved in every piece. So by those systems that you created as you're a one-time person, one-man show, is going to allow you to delegate a whole lot easier and train employees. And it really, if you have employees and you're struggling, they're struggling, or they're not pleasing you, it's your fault. Everything that your employees do, short of maybe stealing from you, right? But I mean, if they aren't doing the job properly, if they aren't doing what you want, if they aren't fast enough, they don't understand, that is all because they were not trained properly or followed through. And y'all, that's what it literally takes. Really interesting. I was just at an ASCFG conference and I just loved spending time with one of my flower farming friends. And she runs a big crew. It's Rooted Flower Farm. We'll put her name in the notes. You need to follow her. She does a large bouquet business. It's Michelle. And one of the things that I enjoyed hearing from her was how from the minute she starts talking about a position available on her farm, through the interview process, through the day-to-day training, through the team meetups, they talk about how essential the time it takes to do jobs is to the success, because it's all about being the hustler, right? It's you've got to time, and it's not even just being fast as it is being efficient. And so if you have employees and you think that they're, not doing their job properly, that's your fault. They aren't trained, they don't understand, or you're not following up with them, right? And when we do all those pieces right, it allows us to focus on higher level decision making. And you might not think that you need this because you don't want to grow a big business. Friends, this is what that means to a flower farmer. This means you're going to have time to do more marketing, to always be lining up more customers, to find out about new crops, to network, to all kinds of things that are going to be essential for your flower farming success. And you can, number 5, you can and you should have a life of your own of what you want to do. And that doesn't mean, I mean, I understand we have a lot of folks that are working sun up to sundown and they're killing themselves, literally. That's not correct. They're not doing that because they want to do it. They're doing it because they feel like they have to do it. You can and should have a life of what you want to do and have a flower farming business. Now, for me, I love my work. I love everything about it. I love the teaching. I love the growing. I love the writing. I love the filming. I love all of it. And literally, I jump in and out of business all day long. Here, I mean, part of my business is here on my home where the farm is, but I also have another location. And yes, my business is set up that I can draw a line in the sand and say that after 4 o'clock in the afternoon, I don't have to do anything. And I really don't do a lot in the evening. But sometimes I'll write and do creative things, but that's because I choose to do those things. You can run a flower farm and business and draw a line in the sand and walk across your driveway or whatever it is that takes you from your farm to your home and just not look back and not feel the need to look back, right? Self-care maybe for me is the feeling of being prepared for the week. Like a lot of times that's what I'll do on Saturdays. I'm doing this on a Saturday. Nobody's here. It's easy for me to do. And I just absolutely love doing this. So for me, I know that this afternoon, Steve and I are doing something together. You can do that. And rest is really essential, particularly because flower farming's a really physical business, right? Especially in the beginning when you're a one-man show, you never get it all done. You feel like it's just growing out of control. And that's why we just implement so many, in addition to time management, preventative measures on our farm. But having good rest. I mean, we go to bed early every night. We wake up early every morning. We eat good meals. We eat good food. We never skip. We eat breakfast, lunch, and dinner. Typically, Steve and I eat breakfast and dinner together every single day, and I eat lunch with my crew. And so these are all part of resting your being and can just really help prevent burnout and go towards the long-term productivity of your flower farm. And because we lose so many great professional cut flower growers, better known as flower farmers, to crashing and burning. And we see it typically in year 2 and 3. People come in 100 miles an hour, they overplant, overbuy, overcommit, and then just think, and then they feel like you can't make money being a flower farmer. Well, you can't like that, friends. And so it's all about management of your time. And you are literally the only one that can go about this. All right, friends, this is a good one. Number 6 is the garden layout can lead to so much efficiency of time management. Oh my goodness. I can remember back to the first way that my farm was set up, and I just did it I just didn't think big picture. And it affected everything from frustration to the number of steps. So your garden layout can really be a big part of your time management. See, this is more than just sitting down and saying, I'm not going to do this or I am going to do this. It's the way you set your business up. So when your garden is set up for your farm, it's different for every single person. It can streamline the harvesting process and can significantly improve the overall efficiency of production. And what does this mean? So my farm now is set up that the heads of all the beds are in a line, and I can drive a harvest trailer right down the head. It's in close proximity to this building where they're all going to ultimately be. The bed lengths are pretty uniform, which means that stuff can be interchanged. So you're not wondering, is it too short, too long? But the biggest part for me was the harvesting process, because we don't carry buckets down the rows. I mean, we do our cutting and then walk to the bucket, cutting our stem ends and dropping them in the bucket and going back. And there's a lot of reasons why I do it that way that we won't jump into here, but it totally streamlines. And even if you have runners on your farm, which we did have those, we were in high production and I was cutting 2 tons of coxcomb, and those stems are heavy and big. I had teenage boys that worked here, and they would run from cutter to cutter, grabbing your handful and running it to the bucket so you never had to stop. All of this makes you more efficient, right? So the way that your garden is actually set up is more about efficiency than it, and I mean the efficiency of maintaining how mowing happens around your gardens or your pathways or all of this significantly can improve the overall production of your farm, which is the point, right? So that is number 6 is even the way that your farm is laid out. And y'all, I changed mine up. Oh my goodness, how many times? Many, many times over the years. Because all of this efficiency of time, I tweak every single week of my business life, 27 years in. I mean, on Saturday, I try to look ahead at the next week, and sometimes I'll cut meetings out or I'll say, we're not going to cut that bed down. We're not going to eliminate that, or we're not you know what I mean? It's a living, moving thing. So don't feel like, oh gosh, I just did it that way. Now I'm changing. That's the point. It's constantly moving. So a little bit of planning is also a big part of number 7, seed plug and supply ordering. So streamlining this keeps you on point. And this is something else that I put on that big calendar that runs my farm. When we need to have seeds. And y'all, the timeline for ordering seeds, plugs, and supplies is much longer now than it used to be because there is just been such an influx of interest in gardening and flower farming. Stuff sells out. It takes businesses longer. I know for us, our timeline gets longer in the busy seasons. So you really need to plan those because you don't want to get caught high and dry, for instance, to not have your cool flower seeds when you need to do cool flower seed starting, or your spring warm season first succession planting, or the supplies you need to do it with, whether that is, row cover or hoops as you're going into winter. All of these things will throw a wrench into your whole efficiency plan. So we plan orders with plenty of lead time to ensure the delivery of the flowers that we're growing to get them to that market. And here's like one of the many things that pop into my mind this time of the year. We're in the fall, right? This is in October. And, I can still hear Dave Dowling in my ear. Nobody should be sitting down to Thanksgiving dinner if they haven't ordered their Lysianthus yet, their Lysianthus plugs. Because most of us as flower farmers order plugs of Lizzie's. That is a long lead time, takes 12 to 16 weeks to grow those little boogers. So you have to tell the growers that you've ordered them for them to be able to do that. And then you add into that getting the ones that you actually want, right? So seed your orders of stuff also can totally derail your timeline for everything. So remember that is a really big piece of managing your time. And here's number 8. It's the flexibility is key. And that I kind of touched on that a minute ago when I was talking about your garden layout. Y'all, for somebody like me that is so structured, oh my gosh, it totally stressed me out, like changing at the last minute. And that's what flower farming is. I mean, I had to practice this, and I still do, although I'm so much better about it today. It's like sometimes when I go to bed at night, it's like, all right, yes, we're planning on harvesting tomorrow. But if it does actually rain overnight, like when it's 40% chance of rain, all right, what if it does rain? We won't be cutting in the morning. But what are we going to do? But then you wake up and guess what? It didn't rain. So it's like you're back to plan A. You really have to flex your flexibility muscle. And if you're like me, if that totally derails you, you better get practicing because that's the way it is in farming. And you are going to constantly be adjusting on weather things as well as, think about this, the market conditions. When depending on how you built your business, I built my business because I'm a field grower. I have no hoop and greenhouses, right? Because I'm a field grower, I have the maximum amount of my flowers during the warm season. Well, that's also vacation season for people. And if you're doing those types of market channels that rely on a customer every week, a retail customer, you might lose them during the summertime. They just get busy doing other things. So I built my business around selling to commercial customers that used staple flowers, those everyday flowers, every single day of their business life. So I changed my business to market conditions, but we still had slow times. I mean, we still were selling to supermarkets. We were still selling to farmers markets, and there is definitely slow times. And so I had to be flexible and say, okay, the majority of this week's harvest, we're going to hang to dry. We're going to do something else, or we're going to gift them, or we're going to make videos, or we're going to make reels for marketing. I mean, I talk about all that stuff in Flower Farm and School Friends. You can make the most out of market condition shifts if you're prepared and if you use your time efficiently instead of pouting and worrying about what are you going to do, right? So strengthening your flexibility muscle is a key piece of making the most of your time and the reality of your timeline. The number 9 is you have to make time for networking and learning. I did not take this to heart probably the first 5 or 6 years. And back then, we hardly had the internet, right? I mean, it was the dinosaur years, y'all. But this was even more key back and when I was first starting out because we didn't have all these resources that you can just jump online and sit down and learn. Um, how I network and learn, you just don't know what you don't know. And I mean, me being fresh off of coming from an ASCFG conference just brought this back to the forefront of my mind of how rejuvenating, how much you learn from just chit-chatting with people, from networking at the cocktail hour or at the appetizer bar, as well as learning from the classes. And this goes for regional flower farmers getting together and online learning and books and podcasts. You have to make these part of your business week. And how we do that is really, really different. So this is the way that I kind of make this part of my life is I do deep dive off season learning of the deep dive stuff. That is, I am always taking online courses. I'm always reading a book. I'm always looking and snooping around on the internet and watching what other people are doing, what they're growing and how they're doing it and how they're selling it and where they're selling it. I do a lot of that snoopy stuff, which is like looking on social media and YouTube during the busy time of the year when I can sit down and spend 15 minutes when I have it. But during the winter, I take deep dives. That's when I do these big courses, business courses and marketing courses. And just, you have to do that's part of, you have to always continually invest in yourself all the time. You have to make time for collaboration with other flower farmers. You can't be afraid of your competition, y'all. It's like the rising tide lifts all boats. Locking arms with the other flower farmers in your region or your area will really grow your business. And then going to conferences and meetups and extension office stuff and even speaking. I mean, if you start talking to garden clubs, that's the off-season stuff is how I do that. But every single week it doesn't matter how busy I am, I make time to constantly be learning and to look at a way to be networking. And I think it's so easy to be swallowed up by your growing operation that you think you don't need that. But friends, I'm here to tell you, it is the icing on our cake. And by choosing what you do with your time, you have to bring that in. And then the learning part of that, which is number 10, learning what are the significant steps that you should be focusing on first And sustaining to scale a business is what I wrote down here, is the beginning of a successful flower farming business. You don't know what you don't know, meaning you don't even know what you should be doing with those previous things that I'm talking about, right? Until you learn it somewhere. That's not something we're just born with. And I am raising my hand here. If you're listening to this instead of watching, I am guilty of getting an idea, jumping in without any facts, and wasting a lot of time and even money, dollars, doing the wrong thing. And I'm just here to say you don't have to do that. There are so many resources that we have available to you, to all of us, that help and guide us, because the learning, I mean, when I hear business people that are doing millions and millions of dollars a year in big business, not flower farming, talking about how they are still continuing to learn, it makes me feel so much better about my little business, and knowing that it's not that I'm lacking something, that why I feel the need to keep learning. That is the key to building a business. So do not forget about number 10 and making time, because it is really very, very significant. So becoming a flower farmer, y'all, as I wrap this up, is doesn't require you to be a rocket scientist or working from sun up to sundown. It does require doing the right work and then not quitting before the success happens for you. And it will come sooner or later. Our time is our scarcest resource, y'all. If you can't manage it and do the things that are important for your business, it's really likely that you can't really manage a successful flower farm. I realize that, and that's what helped me to flip the switch. So, friends, remember, it's a decision, not something you're born with. You have to decide that you're going to manage your time. And remember that all those people that you admire and don't know how they got it all done, it started because I can almost promise you they managed their time properly. So that's the reality of your time. Ciao, friends.